Awesome. Well, I wanted to discuss today, obviously we're both on opposite ends of the spectrum. You're on the seller side with Ray White and the Upper North Shore, and obviously we're on the buyer side at Henderson Advocacy. So we're in an interesting time period for us. I think it's another day, another lockdown. So I wanted to kind of get an understanding on, feet on the ground, what you're observing from the seller side and what your thoughts are on the market at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. My name's Michael Dempsey. I work with David Walker here on the Upper North Shore. For Ray White, Upper North Shore, we're selling properties from Roseville all the way to Hornsby, St Ives. So we have a good grasp on how the market's been going over the definitely past few weeks with lockdown and kind of what we're seeing going forward, which is the unknown. We know what happened last time with lockdown. It was speculation from banks that we were going to come back 30%. And we ended up really going in the opposite direction. I know in Northbridge at the moment, they're seeing growth of about 34%. And in Marunga, we're seeing growth up to 20%. And that's all while people are saying that stocks are low, stock levels are low, but we're finding more buyers than ever before are wanting to move into these areas and are happy to transact on that. Is that something that you're seeing on your end as well?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I think the market at the moment, it's coinciding, with a seasonal kind of slowdown period within the winter part of the year, and also with another lockdown. Like you said, it's kind of, the lockdown last year is kind of a prime example of how the market seemed to go. It slowed down a little bit, and I think we're anticipating a massive pent-up demand, both on the buyer and the seller side. And then ideally, when everything goes back to normal, a massive boom. So it feels a little bit like now's the best time to buy in terms of kind of zigging when other people are zagging and trying to get ahead of the curve.
Yeah. I think when you say that as well, good time for buying. I think even on the selling side of things, with the way the market is, you're only getting genuine buyers through your home right now, whether you're on market or off market. The way things are working, they're exactly the same. So in the opinion from where we're coming from right now, and the lack of stock on the market. So if I put my seller's cap on, I'm not competing against 5-6 other properties that are on the market right now. My competition is my own price in my head on what I want, and the buyers we're getting through, a perfect example, 29 Alice Street, which we have going to auction tomorrow night. That's been on the market for 2 weeks. We actually ended up bringing the auction forward a week because the amount of interest we have due to the lack of stock. And we should have a cracking auction there tomorrow night, which I think is going to show that the market right now is probably at its peak, because the lack of competition for vendors, buyers still need to buy and are ready to buy.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. We've seen that as well in terms of the buyer inquiries that we've had come through the past few weeks. From when we first went into lockdown a few weeks ago, we nearly doubled the buyer inquiries that we had. So it just goes to show people are still out there, people are still looking. I think I read a statistic the other day. Finder.com did a evaluation essentially on buyer sentiment, so to speak, in the market. And It was 1 in 7 people are still looking to purchase in the next 7 months. So we get it on the phones all the time. Seems to be a 50% split in terms of that buyer pool that we're speaking to. And there's half that are on the fence, like some were last year, in terms of, let's see, let's wait it out, rather put that on pause. And then the other half that are gung-ho, ready to go, let's get ahead of the competition. And it's definitely an interesting dynamic. One thing that you touched on in terms of the stock and moving into online auctions, and obviously with lockdown, it's a different day-to-day, for us, and I'm assuming for the seller side as well. A lot of the things we're hearing on the phone is, they're seeing a lot of the buyers are seeing a lot less stock online. I'd love to get your perspective. You touched on off-markets briefly, but how are you finding the on-market versus off-market sales at the moment?
What we're seeing, especially on the North Shore, across all those suburbs, we're ranging a lot of kilometres there in terms of radius and stock levels, is off-market sales. They're not really happening right now. There's some here or there, which of course is always going to be the way. But if I was a seller right now and I wanted to sell my home, the difference between off market and getting a database through from either a few agents or a particular agent, sure, you might be able to snag a buy at a really good level and be happy with that and so-called get lucky. But marketing these days, you're spending anywhere between maybe $6,000 and $10,000 for marketing. And touching on what I said earlier, you're only getting buyers right now who are buying. You're not getting neighbours. You're not getting people who are going, oh, I'm considering this area. I might think about moving up here. They're people who are moving up here. They are people who want to buy within the next 6 weeks or 3 months, whatever it may be, but they're looking because they want to buy tomorrow. So in terms of on or off market, like I think going on market right now is a better time than ever. I think when we start getting closer to spring and lockdown starts to ease, fingers crossed, we'll see a lot more stock come on, which means your competition as a seller goes through the roof. And then the buyers get more choice, which again, we could see a dip, we may not. It's the thing with lockdowns right now, we don't know what's going to happen. And I kind of bring it back to a point you mentioned earlier as well, is the buyers that you're dealing with and transacting properties on, are they more likely to put offers in now or to wait to go to auction to see if the competition's there or not?
Yeah, good question. So at Henderson Advocacy, we generally try and get in before we get to the auction stage, purely to minimise the competition and essentially get the best bang for buck.
Yeah.
And that's to your point, essentially around, the buyers and the sellers. There is a little bit of uncertainty. And I think for the buyers that, like you said, are qualified and are ready to go, they've done a little bit more due diligence. I think before the lockdown, there was a lot of FOMO. There was a lot of hype in the market. There was, up to 50 people at any one auction that I was seeing, if not more. But I've seen you at heaps, and it was rain, hail, or shine. There was people in the backyards with umbrellas ready to go. So it's in terms of, people are out there, they're ready to buy. But I think now, from the people I've spoken to, we're thinking slightly more bigger picture. Previously, like you said, we're at the peak of a market. So for a lot of people, the misconception is any property is a good property, and it's not the case. You've got to think about the resale value. You've got to think about if you're financially and mentally ready to go right now, because it's not the best time for everyone. But I think in terms of the buyers we've seen and where we come into play as a buyer's agent, with the lockdown, it's definitely shifted in terms of how we go through properties. So I know you mentioned on the phone the other day, you've been at, a couple of properties for a few hours a day doing private inspections. And I think time is of the essence, both in the marketplace and also people want their weekends back. They want their lives back. They want to do a good job in buying, but also do it at the right point in time. And so that was one of my questions for you. With the COVID shift, how you found that shift your day-to-day in terms of, inspections. Obviously, auctions have gone to online, and it seems like the hype is still very much there.
Yeah, so I think we learned a lot last year during lockdown, which really gave us as a business a chance to prepare if it happened again, which unfortunately it has happened. And we moved quickly into the online auction platform very quickly. And I know the week we had our first auction, there's an agent, Dominika Bator, ran an auction on a Thursday night, and we actually ended up having 20 registered bidders. And the way we ran that process is we had agents, because we have such a large business, being able to be on the phone and engaging with one buyer each agent and bidding on their behalf, so that they were having really good interactions with an agent who understands the industry and the current restrictions we're under, but also being confident that they can help them buy. And since then, I can't even remember the number off the top of my head about how many we've run, but I know last Saturday we ran 4, and a total of $1 million over reserve was met through all those auctions. And apparently we're in a time where we're in lockdown, we can't leave our houses, and we're still achieving exceptional results, and buyers are still really happy walking away, actually just being able to buy. Because a lot of these guys have sold 6, 8, 12 weeks ago, and the fear in their mind is where do we go? Like, the stock's so low, what are our options? And having those right plans in place and knowing as a vendor that your agents are doing the right thing to still do the job that's necessary. And it comes back to doing those back-to-back appointments. I know for Alice Street, we've been there nearly 4 hours every Saturday with 10-minute inspections per buyers. And if I'm thinking as a buyer right now, and I've been looking for 6 to 12 months, it might be the best time to get a buyer's agent to do the legwork for you, because otherwise you're running around to 6, 7, 8 properties on a Saturday and getting 10 minutes to have a look at it, where you have the opportunity to hire someone to do that for you, who will have a relationship with these agents, and have more understanding of the marketplace and be able to do all this legwork for you. And in the scheme of things, if it gets you a property that you're happy with, that's the end goal anyway. I think it doesn't really matter, as long as you're getting the home that you want and you're getting it at the right price. It's happy days.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. To your point, I think from what I'm hearing on the phones a lot is some people have been looking for, 9 to 12 months, and we jump on these phones and the general intro is like, oh, we've been looking for a super short while, and we ask a little bit more, and the short while for them is a few months. I mean, you and I have both seen, like everybody else, I think, following the market, a couple of months is massive, massive shift. I think I read some stats around the North Shore price increases, and June 2020, June 2021, it's skyrocketed by about 20%. So the budget that people had initially last year, sitting on the fence and then thinking about it now into yet another lockdown, realistically, nobody knows when it's going to end. It seems like buyers seem to be in a little bit of a cycle in terms of that kind of mental battle between do I wait, do I go, do I wait, do I go?
Yeah. And that's a question for you as well. Like talking to buyers who have been looking for maybe 8 to 12 months and they've seen the market go through what it seems like 3 or 4 changes. It's like seasonal at the moment. It's like we're going winter, autumn, spring, but we're not going in order. We're skipping everything altogether. Are buyers feeling like it is a good time to buy? What are their feelings around the marketplace as a whole right now?
Good question. I've seen both sides of the spectrum, and I think there's that one side that's in the same boat that they might have been last year in terms of a little bit of hesitation. There's, a concept of the unknown, which is realistically always going to be there. There's a lot of buyer and lockdown fatigue, I would say. A lot of people I've spoken to, feel like they've missed out. They've always been second in line. I get that. I think every day I always seem to be second in line or third in line and I just miss out. Yeah. There's a lack of market knowledge sometimes as well. So there's a little bit of realignment into what you can actually get for that budget. And there's also a concept of time. I think people and sometimes are under the misconception that a couple months' time or up to a year's is an average search time, when really it shouldn't take that long. There's the right properties at the right time for sure. But I think using a buyer's agent or leveraging the knowledge that a seller's agent like yourself would have is, all right, where are the good pockets? Where are the not so good pockets? Where can I get bang for buck? Is this right for my family and I? Is it not? It's not always going to be the best property. So obviously we don't want to get them into that. But I think leveraging a buyer's agent, you and I speak, I think, every other day in terms of what's happening in the market, what's coming on the market, what's off the market, all of that sort of stuff. So I think it definitely adds up. But to your point around what we're hearing, this again, lockdown fatigue, buyer fatigue. Some people are getting over it and some people are just getting started. So really depends on who we get on the phone that day. I think a lot of people that were meant to travel this year, for example, haven't traveled this year. So they've got a significant deposit saved up that was meant to be used in, Santorini or Mykonos or wherever they were going. And I think let's put that in towards a family house. So there's definitely been a shift in terms of, I think, the financial mindset. Is kind of seen an increase of buyers come to market as well.
Like I think it coming from, like, if I'm on the buying side, like if I was a buyer's agent right now on your side of things, and like me being where I am, I get to see both sides. I'm in the middle, and looking at everything that's happening in the marketplace. As a buyer right now, you know how much competition there is. You know what you're up against, because when you're going to one of these appointments for one of these properties and there's a couple of people waiting in their car or someone's walking out or whatever it may be, you can see your competition where in a half an hour window open home, which you were going through 6 months ago, you don't know who's a buyer, who's a neighbour, who's what. Like you never, it's all speculation, and you've got to take my word for it, which we all know sometimes not all buyers do that. But right now you can see what you're up against. You can see the competition that's there. And I think that's the strongest thing as a buyer, knowing where you're up to compared to everyone else. And if you have the buying capacity and the buying power right now to buy something, it would honestly be my recommendation. We don't know where the market's going to go. Sure, you can take the punt and take the risk that when we come out that it'll drop 10%, maybe 15, but we're still exactly where we were 12 months ago then, because we've come up 20. Or we could see another boom like we did last year. And it's always been my advice, whether a seller or a buyer, look at the market at what it is today, and if that's something that works for you, then my advice would be to act on that.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. I think nobody has a crystal ball, so it's very hard. And you get asked this all the time. It's, what do you think the market's going to do? Where do you think the market's going? And realistically, nobody knows, but it kind of comes down to the individual. I mean, ideally, the best time to buy always was yesterday, given the shifts that we I think if you've got the finances ready to go, if you're mentally kind of prepared to buy, realistically, right now is the best time to buy. And I think understanding, firstly, getting clear on your brief, I think that's the first battle we tend to face. Probably not battle. The first challenge, I think, is always realigning expectations in terms of, okay, I've got X amount of money, I've got X non-negotiables, and I want to hit suburb 1, 2, 3, 4. Where can we go and what can we do with that? I think that's the biggest piece as a buyer's agent, is kind of nailing down that brief initially. And then second to that is going out, getting on the ground, speaking to agents like yourself, seeing what's out there, seeing if it's even feasible to achieve that brief. And then if so, what's the best property that we can go into?
Yeah. And like something you touched on just then as well, like knowing if you can actually, like if you have the budget and the finances ready to go today, and you know where you want to be, that can change in a month. And there's a stat that I've read over the weekend, which it actually blew my mind that it happened this quickly. That in February this year, in Marunga, the median price was $2 million. It was $2,084,000 or something. And by the time it hit March, it was 2.284. So you're looking at nearly $300,000 in a median house price in an area go up nearly $300,000. So you're immediately priced out of the market within 4 weeks. It's just, this is what happens in real estate. And if we all had the crystal ball and knew what was going to happen, we'd be rich. We all would. We'd all be happy. We'd be going to Santorini, having a great time, going to Bali the second weekend. But it's something we're never going to know. It's just something that act today like tomorrow it's going to go up 30%. Like, don't try and play it, because you actually end up getting played.
Agreed. And I think from a buyer's perspective, I'd love to understand, as a selling agent, what some of your biggest tips might be for someone that, like we said, might have been looking for 9 to 12 months and feel like they were always second in line. Are there kind of top 3 things that you would suggest they do, on their own kind of accord to get geared up for the market and get in the mindset of buying?
Yeah, like the thing about, I guess, coming second a lot, sometimes you need to really become realistic with yourself, and if you're missing out by $5,000-$10,000 here or there, then that can be tough. That can just be the way it goes, and sometimes there's not much you can do about that. But I've built really good relationships with buyers who have transacted in the Upper North Shore area time and time again. And the reason they've managed to continually buy and continually transact and either renovate and move it on, or whatever their plan is that continually keep in contact with that agent or agents. And that's one important thing. Like, I have certain clients of mine who are saving my phone forever, and I know when they're calling me for one thing. They want to see what's off market, what's coming on, who do they need to be speaking to, is there someone in the area who I need to be speaking to that can help me get into a door faster than others, or that's one point. The other point would just be research and go to the first open home. Don't wait a week. Don't wait a second week. The amount of times I've seen buyers, and actually the same buyers for 6 months, who won't turn up to that first open home. You'll see them the second week, and then it's sold that second week on the Monday for a price that they may have paid. They may not have. They've only seen it once, but they haven't even had the opportunity. And it's something that we see as selling agents more than anything, is buyers not being ready and not having enough time to be ready. And that's all about doing due diligence. So as a buyer, like I'm a buyer myself right now, the first thing I'm doing, if I'm inspecting a property and I have some mild interest, I'm getting the contract. That's going to my solicitor day one. I'm getting all my checklists done by Tuesday after one viewing. Then I'll go back, have a look on a Wednesday if I can make it, or book a private inspection. Agents are more than happy to do private inspections on your second inspection. They will do it time and time again because they know you're a genuine buyer. And once you start doing those due diligence checks and getting that done regularly, you'll find that you won't miss out anymore. Because sometimes it's more about speed at the right level than it is about paying $700,000 over reserve, which no buyer ever wants to do. If you're happy at the right level and you've done your due diligence and you act first, 9 times out of 10, you'll buy the property.
I agree. And I think to your point, the dream team essentially comes into it. Speed firstly, and then having the right people around you. So like you mentioned, having, your conveyancer, your solicitor on hand ready to go, having your finance ready to go, and getting the mortgage brokers, aware that you're looking and figuring out where you can push your money, getting, your building and pest inspections done, doing all of that sort of stuff. We've seen and heard in the market people missing out on deals purely because they don't have that team pre-established and all of their boxes essentially ticked before they're ready to go. So that's kind of the competitive edge, I guess, of somebody that might get it and somebody that might not is the preparation.
Yeah, exactly. What are some of the things that when you're qualifying and helping your clients find and buy properties, what are some of the things that maybe buyers don't think of that you bring to their attention, and then they're like, oh, I never thought of this. I could have bought that and done X, Y, Z or something like that.
Yeah, great question. I think the first is pre-approval and speaking to mortgage brokers. And sometimes people think that the bank is on their team and the bank's the only way to go. So firstly, opening up the mindset to let's have a chat to a mortgage broker. Given the current landscape financially with interest rates being so low, it's kind of the perfect storm, I think, in terms of both equity and finances. So firstly, getting that sorted, because sometimes we hit buyers sometimes whether at the start or towards the end of their search when they're over it. And I think both of those cases, a lot of the time finances is the key thing. So talking about potentially refinancing if there's pre-existing properties in the portfolio, or thinking about getting different interest rates and then getting that sorted before you get ready to go.
Yep.
The second thing is also getting a conveyancer on your side or a solicitor. I think a lot of people think about that down the track, and it kind of comes down to it. Like you said, you go through an open, it might be the dream house. You want to get the contract, but somebody's beat you to it because you don't have your team in place. So that's the second thing. Yeah, I think so. In terms of the dream team, it would be, the finance side of things, the legal side of things, probably a biased opinion, but I think a buyer's agent that has the local market knowledge firstly. I think that's a key thing. Sometimes we see people shifting from various pockets of Sydney. So at Henderson, we'd work across, the eastern suburbs, the inner west, northern beaches, the North Shore, all the way up to Newcastle. And so we're speaking to potential buyers and sellers that are kind of looking to move, upsize or downsize, or want the coastal lifestyle, or want to move into the city, or want to move into, the lush greenery that is in the North Shore. So a lot of the time it's also figuring out what suburb is actually right for them and their lifestyle, because sometimes there's a preconceived notion of what something might be like and what they can get. It's it's completely different to when you get there realistically and, kind of figuring out what's the best fit. So I think education and suburb knowledge is a huge thing. And then it even comes down to the local knowledge. Sometimes you've got families looking to move into different school catchment zones. So it's educating them around, do the boys want to go to Knox, or do they want to go to, Ravenswood or PLC? All of that sort of stuff comes into play as well. So it's getting an understanding on why the buyer is buying. Most importantly, is it upsizing? Is it downsizing? Is it a lifestyle change? And then gearing that search towards that individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a big point as well, as a buyer, choosing a buyer's agent as well, because when you actually get down that path, it's like, well, there's so many out there. Who do I actually go for? And something that I look for, especially when dealing with buyer's agents, are the ones that engage regularly and frequently, because that then they're the buyer's agent who is proactively working for their clients, and they want to get their client to property. They want to get deals done. So I know if I have something coming up off market, you're going to be one of the buyer's agents I call first, because I know that you've got people ready to go because you're informing me week in, week out. So as a buyer, if you're thinking about a buyer's agent to choose from, choose the ones that are being proactive in the market, but with the selling agents, not just with the properties. So you have to pick someone who is going to be doing that for you week in, week out. I'm going to be biased and like I recommend you every day of the week, which I've already done in the past, but it's something that as a buyer, you need to be doing. You need to do that due diligence process, and you really need to pick someone who's going to be proactive for you.